Welcome back, everybody. This is Josh and Gabe talking about Sinners. We are in our audience and rethink section. So, Gabe, who do you think this movie is for? Usually we do it evangelistically, family and kids, and with friends. So how do you see Sinners either fitting into those groups, or like what are some caveats you would put on the movie to maybe help people have not just black and white filters of like good or bad, but to really think through, is this a movie I should be watching?
Sure. I would say first and foremost that this movie is very intense.
Yeah, 100%.
It's very dark. I don't think that's a reason we should avoid it, but I do think it is very intense. I think it is definitely probably meant for more mature audiences. I could see this movie getting with a bunch of your friends and watching it and having a discussion kind of like what we're doing now about it. I think this movie is, there's so much commentary about, I think this movie is really for marginalized people. And I really think it does talk about the Black experience. And so I think that as like a biracial person myself watching this movie, I felt very seen because it kind of goes through not only the history of like Jew jams and like slave music, but it also brings up this the time of the KKK and how intense that was. And so I would say this is like something that I think is worthwhile watching, like with friends, having a discussion about it as well.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think there's no part of me that doesn't think it's worth acknowledging the intensity of the film. And like there's some blood, there's some gore, there's some sensual scenes, like there's a couple sex scenes in it. Like it's a adult flavored film.
Yeah.
So to that, like I think we've been seeing online, and we talked a little bit about this, so we won't over talk about it, but a lot of online creators, specifically Christian creators, have kind of been saying like, I'm not going to watch it. I don't think this is something we should watch, all that stuff. What are components, or like who are people specifically in the Christian faith that you actually think would really get something out of this? Like what would be some things that you would maybe say, hey, if you're this kind of person or you're thinking about these kinds of things, if you approach it right, this could be a really good movie to see. But if you're struggling with XYZ, you're probably not at a place yet to engage this.
That's a great question. I would say that if you are like a creative in the church, not just, and I wouldn't say on staff at a church, like if you're a Christian creator, I guess, musician, visual or like graphic artist, I think this movie is really cool. I found myself being really inspired by it. I think that just the soundtrack of this movie is insane. So I think if you're like a Christian creator in that sense, and you're looking to be inspired, or you're like searching for, do I fit in the church space?
Yeah.
I think this is like a really inspiring space. I also think that we were talking about this before the podcast I think a lot of people thought this was very like an outright like demonic movie. Yeah. I think there are some themes there, but I would say that is not what I felt like watching it. I had seen the trailer, but I really didn't feel like, oh my gosh, this is like really demonic.
Satanic.
Yeah. Like I didn't feel unsafe watching this as a Christian. So I would say, like if you are a Christian creator who's looking to be inspired, watch this movie, because I think you'll learn a lot from that. I also think that, I don't know, I'm trying to think of other people that I think this fits into a lot of different categories. Oh, I would also say if you are really into history, which I am also, like I love just learning about history. I thought this was really interesting. And like at some point I would love to do a deep dive into all the themes, like the Irish, Remick. I'm like, I don't even know what that's about. But I thought it was really cool. I'm sure there was a lot of accurate history. There's probably a lot of like, what do we say? Like
embellishments.
Like creative freedoms.
Yep.
But I thought it was really cool because like the costumes, how they're talking is very, like you're led into a totally different time period. And I thought that was really cool too. So Christian creator looking to be inspired, if you are like a wannabe historian, I think this is like a really cool movie for that as well.
Yeah.
And then the third one is if you are like a video person, like if you're just interested in cinema or how people video shoot things, this movie is insane. I was listening to this podcast and they had, I think, interviewed Ryan Coogler or his video team, and the way they shot this was designed to be shown on the IMAX movie screen, and so the shots are insane. So I would say, like, if you're looking for inspiration there, it is crazy. Like the angles that they have, the cameras they're using, it's just gorgeous.
Well, to add on to that one too, the technical execution to pull off Michael B. Jordan playing twins the entire movie and just his acting chops to be able to do that. Like that is a very, very, like, I don't think people have talked enough about that. Cause like you've had like Seth Rogen do it for like a comedy or something, but to do it in a way where when I was watching the entire movie, I was like, I don't remember that this is a different person.
I was just about to say
like,
that, 100%.
There's such a fine line that you can walk between making it feel really, really corny. And you're like, okay, like, you know, even as a cinema guy, I see that, you know, I was looking for all the shots where it was like, oh, you specifically had a stunt double here. And but I was like, I couldn't keep track of doing that because I kept getting sucked into how real everything was. So I think,
so cool.
Like you said, I think the cinematography and the acting and just the realness of everything going on is so well done.
Yeah.
So these are all the good things. I 100% agree with that list. What are some of the things that you would say are like, if you're a person either who's sensitive, struggling with, not sure about, like, what would be some of those people?
Yeah. Before I say that, one last thing I was going to say about
go for it.
Like a cinematic thing. I would have loved to see how they shot the scene where, you know, the like main cast is in the barn and the vampires are about to bust in and then they break the door down. It's this insane fight scene. I would have loved to see how that even happened, because there's so much going on, but at the same time you're seeing everything happen. Anyways, I loved this movie so much. Okay, so I think that there are a couple things that come to mind. The first is like, if you are sensitive to like sensual scenes, I think there are some of those graphic scenes that I would
oddly no nudity in any of the movie. But it's also
so
like,
that's good.
Yeah, but also
but I think there are some like very like
explicit scenes.
Very explicit sensual scenes. I think the other thing I would say too, and I think this is where a lot of the YouTube videos we're seeing from different Christian creators, if you are sensitive to, or maybe you've had very intense like demonic spiritual experiences, I could see how this movie could potentially like be triggering to you in that way, especially the first scene. We were just talking about this. It's terrifying. So I would say like, if you have experience with that, or if that's just something that is really, you just are not in a place where you can be open to thinking about those kind of experiences, I would say that this movie could potentially be kind of at a deeper level there as well. Yeah. And then I guess along that too, I think there are definitely different religious experiences going on here. So I think that potentially it could be not helpful to see this movie in the sense of if you don't know a lot of those religious experiences, because there's definitely like the Christian experience, there's definitely some witchcraft going on as well. There's some other like world religions as well. I think if you are coming into this movie and knowing that those are present, I think that helps. Because it's not from the lens of all Christianity. Like I think there's some things that are being represented there. So I would say those are like the three categories if you find yourself.
I would agree.
In those, I think just be wary of it and maybe have that expectation if you are going to decide to watch this movie.
And I think I appreciate you laying those out too, because I think that's one of the things where we have a upcoming class we're going to be releasing about discernment. And I think when we think about Christian discernment, it's a very rigid good or bad box versus, well, do I know myself and my spiritual experience and my relationship to God and my triggers and my strengths and weaknesses and all that stuff well enough to know, okay, this movie actually isn't going to bother me because, you know, for some people watching like Saving Private Ryan, they're not going to bat an eye because it's war, it's real, it's history, even if it's really gory and intense and there's a lot of cursing. But something like this that's a little bit more historical, real to life, that might not be good for them. And you have to know that for yourself. And so we want to encourage you as listeners and viewers to like be ready to do that work when, you know, that's, or even prepare. Like, don't just trust that, oh, this Christian YouTuber said it's bad, so like, I guess don't watch it. But you might come to the same conclusion that it's not right for you. It just might be for different reasons, and to not be afraid to do that work before writing it off.
100%.
So.
As you're talking, I was thinking, and I think you and I, Josh, have connected on this. I do love like thriller movies.
Yeah.
Like I
we
love
watched
them so much.
Nope. Which is, we got to do a podcast
awesome.
on that one sometime.
But there have definitely been movies where it's gone more into like more demonic themes. And I have had experiences where I'm like, this is like too close. Like I just don't want to like entertain this because I don't know what the relationship is there, but I just know for me, I don't want to like kind of welcome that into I like thriller movies more of like the suspense of it or like the surprise ending or whatever. So I think to your point, I think that's a great point.
Yeah. Well, and as you're saying that, like I've kind of had a personal policy where for me, especially just knowing some of the histories of how demon possession movies are made, like I don't watch things like Poltergeist or The Exorcist or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's not because I think I'm going to get possessed.
Yeah.
But I think there's a misuse of that kind of
100%.
stuff that I don't feel is like necessary for me to engage with. But to me, there's a difference between that kind of like spiritual discomfort and something like Sinners, and at least for me. So for me, like I can delineate those two things and I know this is different. I'm going to engage with it in a healthy way. It's fine.
Yeah.
But for others, that might not be the thing. So
for sure.
To that, our first rethink question I'm going to ask you, Gabe, is why did you make the decision to go see this movie? So because clearly there's a lot of contention, especially in the Christian circles around it.
Yeah.
Why did you see this as a movie that you're like, I got to see what's going on here?
Yeah. I'm trying to think back on like what my initial decision. I think that I saw the trailer and I was like, oh my gosh, this looks really intriguing. Like, I don't even remember what scenes they showed in the trailer, but I was like, oh, this feels like vampire movie that's like, you know, in the deep south, like kind of like older history kind of movie. So I was like, whoa, that looks cool. And I actually had no idea that Michael B. Jordan was going to be playing both roles. I just, in the trailer, I was like, oh, he's in it. That's cool. I think watching the trailer, I was like, oh, that looks like really cool. I was at another movie with my dad and we saw this preview. I turned to him and I was like, we got to go see that. He's like, I'm not going. And I was like, okay, that's fine. But so I think the trailer did it for me for sure. It was very intriguing.
It's interesting that you say that because for me, from the art side, I'm always looking for, because right now I have a whole vendetta against trailers because I feel like they actually keep me from going to see it because I'm like, this looks like the exact same thing I've seen 300 times. It's an action guy. There's a good guy. There's a bad guy. But I remember seeing this and I was like, whoa, what is going on here? And there was like this mystery of like, let's check this out. Like, I want to see what happens. Was there any part either before seeing it, during seeing it, or after seeing it that you were like, ugh, maybe this was a miss. Like I shouldn't have. Speaking of our audience and discernment, where you were like, I don't know if this hit me the right way, or like, did you feel like you're like, nope, I kind of have a sense of what I'm getting into. I've kind of maybe understood a little bit, and then as you kind of went through the process, you were kind of like wrestling with it, so it never was like all good or all bad. You're just like, I have a healthy relationship with this movie.
Yeah, I'm like putting myself back when I was watching it. I definitely think that. Like, I actually think this happened to me at the beginning of the movie, and we've mentioned this a couple times now. The opening scene is absolutely terrifying, and when he's like walking out with the broken guitar, I really thought that like Sammy was gonna murder his dad, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, so that first couple minutes, I was like, what have I gotten myself into? I remember thinking that. And then it, kind of cuts back to going through the story. But then towards the end, when he's like, it's that long scene when he's walking down and the whole church is there. I had that again. And I was like, he's going to kill his dad. And then it cuts to another scene. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. So I think that, to answer your question, I think the beginning scene, I was like, oh my gosh, I think this is going to be really scary.
Yeah.
But the way they kind of go back and tell it, I think there was a really long time of not a ton of like scary things happening. It was a lot of building the story. So I actually think that helped me a lot. I kind of forgot about that beginning scene. And then when it comes in the end, it was like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Like it was more suspenseful for me.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So from your angle, that first initial scene was like, oh snap, like this made you uncomfortable, and you kind of were at a decision point of like, do I stay, do I go, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And did that happen ever again during the movie, or did you kind of like, you were kind of in it, you're focused,
Oh yeah, I think I was totally in it, and I think actually what helped me stay too was the soundtrack as well. I was like, the whole time I was thinking, I went and saw it on like a Thursday at like 3 p.m.
Yeah,
and I was kicking myself because I was like, dude, this whole movie would have sounded so much better if I would have gone to like
the super theater,
like Dolby Atmos, or whatever.
Yeah.
And like, I was like, no.
Yeah.
But so yeah, I think that was the only time I really felt it. I was really cued in for the rest of the time, especially when it's like they start telling the story, and it's like, I was just so engrossed in it by that point. So I was like, I gotta stay.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I'm curious to ask that because I think, again, talking about like audience and discernment, I think sometimes people, like, it's easy for us to again, just while I'm here, I'm just going to watch it. And there's like warning signs and things that are starting to like maybe wrestle us in our soul. And it's like, you know what? I probably should leave. Like this isn't, I'm getting the sense this isn't good for me. But there's other times where it's like, ooh, I'm reacting to the art and the craft versus like, this like, I don't know, supernatural force that we're assuming is like behind the movie. But we'll move on from there. So we, and kind of touch back to our message portion. So Sammy's cousins, Smoke and Stack, clearly are not good influences as we see. Yeah. And yet they're the only people, as we can tell in Sammy's life, who are telling him to play music, to pursue his dreams. And they actually give him a platform that is pretty meaningful to do so. What would you say, making a note of all the evils that subjects him to as the movie goes on? So like in your mind, what are some ways that as artists or as just humans with gifts that God gives us, can we vet influences and opportunities to see who is worth kind of like using our gift around with, and, when we might be given opportunities by people that are actually not for our good?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a big part of it is like, how can you vet people? I think a good kind of, litmus test is if people are asking you to use your art in this way, who is the person that is asking you? Is it someone that knows you, that for sure knows your talent, but is also like, I actually want you to do this event or this service or whatever, because who you are is going to actually help this thing go better, or who you are is it's going to be a cool opportunity for you, like beyond the performance of it. I always love doing those kind of events because I know the person who asked me like knows me well and is aware of the struggles of like the performance mindset. I think there's in the church world, this can be, I think, a lot harder to detect because I think some people really just see you for like who you are is what you do. And I think a lot of people are not malicious in that. They are really trying to be caring people. But a lot of the times what happens is that they expect you to be, preaching every sermon or leading at every single event. And so I think it takes for us an internal thing of like showing up to stuff where you're not doing stuff, like where you're just existing. Cause I think then that will help people see, oh, he's actually just here being present. Yeah. And I think that kind of helps people's like mind with that. But in terms of the vetting process, like having people that know you, that know what you're about, that know what you want to do with your art, I think helps a ton because I have stuff all the time where it's like, oh my gosh, this show is happening. This artist friend of mine would be perfect, know, for this. But yeah, I think it's interesting in the movie because I feel like like Smoke and Stack did both at the same time.
Yeah.
It was like they definitely were not a great influence on Sammy, but also at the same time they saw how awesome this gift was.
Yeah.
And I think warned him against some things at the same time. So that was like an interesting tension, I guess, as well.
Yeah. I love the point you made about character, because I think when you're in relationship with people who see your gifts, they know to encourage not just the gift and what it could do and how it could bless, but also the dangers and the precipice that you could fall the other way. So like if I know, for example, I'll use myself, that if someone's like, I know Josh is really talented at these things, but I can sense that little bit of ego that comes out sometimes. And so I want him to do this thing, but like we need to have a conversation beforehand where it's like, what are you going to do to protect your heart before I put you on the stage or have you talk about these things? And so I think we almost over focus on amping up the like you're so good at this and all these things, but forgetting, even to the power of art and what we were talking about, that if I don't encourage people to think about, okay, but like, what are my weaknesses just in terms of what are temptations? What happens when that comes up? And it's not that the devil's testing you, but it's just you do something cool, people pay attention, the wrong people in the wrong states and who are unhealthy. Like I think, for example, like Sammy and the woman who's married, like there's an adultery scene, which is pretty intense, but like that's one of those things where you have Smoke and Stack and their influence and their kind of like floozy nature, and you know they're like these womanizers, and Sammy's like, oh, so you're saying that like with this gift I can unlock that door. And then he sees this woman that he thinks is attractive, and like where that goes. And instead of Smoke and Stack being like, listen, like we love your dad, we want to help him, like do this part with your gift, but like leave this to us kind of thing. They don't really do that. They kind of egg it on. And so just like seeing like what the gifts can unlock and being aware of that. It's like, just because there might be danger on the other side of the door doesn't mean don't do it. But it means be ready and like be 100%. Thinking and preparing.
And I think there's something to be said too about when you are like gifted and talented in different ways. Sometimes people build up a persona about you. I think especially front facing kind of artistry. And I think you should expect that everybody thinks that they know you well because they've seen you on stage. They've seen, I don't know, you speak, whatever you want to fill in the blank with. And I think that can be tough to realize because a lot of people know of you, but they do not know you. And I think you as an artist have to have people that do know you. Because I actually think that does help your art too.
So for sure. Third question. So this is the scene I've been geeking to talk about is they happen at different parts in the movie, but the visuals and everything that happens ingredient wise is too similar to not kind of compare. So the first is we have Sammy, and he's playing for the whole juke joint, and we see this mesmerizing sequence of different eras of music. And everyone is in the same room. There's different cultures. They're in different cultural dress. They're in different points in history, and they're all dancing and having a good time to the same rhythm and sounds, but in their own style, in their own way, in their own culture. And it's all uniform. Like there's no disagreement or anything. Then we have a later sequence where Remick, this ancient vampire villain, has his own music and his own sound and his own song that he's singing. And we also have a multicultural group at this point, but they're all dressed the same. They're all dancing the same way, and everything it's all homogenous. So how do you think we could reimagine those two scenes representing God's vision for creative diversity in Sammy's scene, and then the devil's vision for creative diversity in Remick's scene?
Dude, that's a great question. Okay, I'll start with Remick first, I think. It's so interesting because Remick lured people with his music, you know? And like him and that couple, it's like you're watching it and you can tell everybody else is like, there's something, we can't put a finger on it, but
they're spooky.
This dude is unhinged and he's going to explode at any second. But it's luring because there's something about the music. It's so simple, but it's also so beautiful at the same time. Like the song they're doing, I'm like, I would love to like just listen to that.
Yeah.
It was very like luring. And so I think that's like, I think evil is tempting at things, at our identity, because nobody would fall into temptation or make mistakes if it was something they weren't interested in or didn't speak to them. And so I think that this whole scene with Remick is he's luring people out to form this kind of army, because he does know he needs like the numbers. And then that scene where they're kind of all in like, you know, like a circle or whatever, doing that dance that, as you're saying, they're doing all the same thing.
It's like a line dance. Like everyone's doing the same
very
thing.
Very choreographed.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to be said of they are taking their lead from Remick, and it's not unity, it's uniformity. You know, they're all doing the same
that's a
thing.
bar. I like that.
So I think there's an interesting commentary on these evil forces that, however you want to describe that, it, like, so many times in addiction programs, it's like the thing you're addicted to, it promises so much and it will never deliver because it doesn't care about you. And so I think there's something in Remick's character that represents just this choreographed dance, this very mono.
It's simple. It's easy.
Very simple.
Step on in. You'll get the same thing.
Yep. But then every step you take, you're dying a little bit more.
Yeah.
And then that scene where in the juke jam where they're all kind of doing different things, they're all in a circle. But yeah, as you're saying, there's so much like diversity there. There's like the song Sammy sings, and I think if I remember correctly, he's like singing that song the whole time. Like he's kind of the constant or the, I don't know, like the spark, I guess. And then, you know, the camera pans over, there's like a DJ, and then I can't remember if there's
literally like a spaceman or something.
Yeah, there's like
crazy.
some dude over there. I'm like, I don't even know what you're doing, but you're there. That's awesome. And then it's like the Chinese or Korean woman that is like in her traditional like dress doing her dance. That was so cool. There's like break dancing. There's all this other stuff going on, and it's like it's kind of chaotic.
Yeah.
But no one is kind of stepping on each other's toes. Everyone is kind of finding their place, finding their spot. And I think there is something really beautiful to that of diversity in people, in art form, in socioeconomic status, I think is going to be messy because you're having people come from all different backgrounds. And if you would interview people from that dance scene, it's like there were so many people from like 2020s era and then like 1900s, like there probably would be disagreements in the art form, but there's something about we are like the current people are dancing because of the foundation that their ancestors had laid out for them. And there's something really cool about that. And to, I think, a spiritual experience, I think that's the kind of kingdom God desires of everybody is doing what they're created to do, but it will look different for each person. And there's something beautiful about that. And it's for sure going to be messy, and it's going to take a long time to figure it out. I think there's something about the indoors too. Like there's a safety there.
Yeah, that's good.
Versus like Remick is like
outside, it's dark.
It's dark.
Fire pit.
It's it's like in the middle of like a cornfield or whatever, you know.
Very spooky. No, dude, that's good. I got to pause on I want to take us down a whole rabbit hole for like unity versus uniformity, because that could be a whole essay. But the last question I want to talk about before we close out in our next section with theology is the student answer I sent you. So this was my last year teaching at Eastbrook. That's kind of a big life change. I haven't really made that public. Not that it's a secret, but I had the student Rosario, shout out Rosario. Thanks for all your hard work this year. And she and I were geeking out about Sinners after I saw it. And then there was a unnamed YouTuber that is fairly popular and has a lot of influence in the Christian YouTube scene who had his own take on it. Yeah. And I truthfully didn't watch all of it. I kind of skipped around, but I was having a hard time there were some takes that I did not agree with, not because they were inherently wrong, but they were hyper focused. And so I was curious to see what my student Rosario would say. So I sent her the podcast or whatever. And so I'm going to read her answer verbatim. She sent this to me in between classes, so don't be too harsh on the grammar and stuff. She was just kind of like firing off like her initial thoughts. And there's more to this, but this is kind of the section I wanted to form a question on. So Rosario said, music holds memories and has been an anchor for African Americans throughout time. My parents are very Christian, but they are also black. And I promise they didn't have any thought like, this movie supporting demons or whatever these random men were talking about. And their voodoo take kills me. If you just got out of slavery and the literal KKK are after you and justifying their behavior with Christianity, would you not find other things to practice? So I thought that was a really great take. And as I was rereading in prep for this is kind of a part of the issue I had with this podcast take. So there's been a lot of debate. We've talked about it, this whole series of, is this movie dark and demonic and blah, blah, blah. But interestingly, I've noticed that when I've researched Christians talking about that, what makes this movie demonic or not, it's completely in the musical side, the spiritual side, the holy water to fend off the vampires. And there's very little attention paid to the fact that the KKK and white supremacy is like a through line in the narrative of this entire film. And that's not pointed to as demonic. But all the other visuals and everything else, that's demonic. So given the time period that the film takes place, what do you think are some important backgrounds to the film that you think could help us wrestle with ideas like why maybe a term like syncretism, which is when you take Jesus plus something else. And so in this case, people were kind of hitting at, holy water plus voodoo ritual to like do protection and things like that. How could having a wider perspective of like the different historical elements and character elements help us understand why some of these things narratively make sense and could challenge us to think deeper about this term? Is this movie demonic?
Yeah. Was there like is there a specific like year that like this movie takes place?
So in the summary I had is backdrop of 1930s Mississippi.
Okay, cool. I think there's a lot of historical things happening here. I think as you were talking, I was thinking, the one church scene that you see is like a kind of like Mississippi black gospel church, but they don't have a scene that's like white people going to church, and that's kind of interesting. The history of this of the white guy who sells the property to Smoke and Stack, like you find out later in the movie that him and a bunch of his super racist friends, the next morning we're going to come back.
Well, the whole plan was to shoot kill the entire
to kill everyone.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because if this whole vampire situation wouldn't have happened, they would have been totally murdered that way and would have been caught off guard. I thought that was like a really interesting point that you kind of don't find out till the end of the movie. Like when they have the scene in the beginning when he's selling it to them, you can tell that he's like, he hates black people. Yep. Like it's like there's no like mystery there. And I thought at first that was kind of a throwaway kind of point, but then it comes back. So I think that's one of the big historical things. I think the other big historical thing that I picked up on was I cannot remember her character's name. She is biracial and she plays.
I'll look it up for us. Is it Mary?
Yeah, Mary.
I think it's Mary.
Yes, thank you. How Mary was being perceived and how the white people, when they would come, would be like, oh, wait, why is she here? But then all the black people were like, she's a part of us. Yeah. Like there's something very powerful about that. And I was watching an interview with that actress and she was like, just talking about how moving this experience was because that is her experience.
Yeah.
So I think that's another layer. I mean, I'm sure there's so much more historical things that I'm like forgetting right now, but I think those two things are way like bigger of an emphasis, but it's almost like the movie kind of maybe expertly makes it seem like those are not as big of a deal. And you think it's a movie that's like vampires, music. And I think so many people latch on to that demonic idea because I think there is an obsession in like kind of more maybe conservative Christian cultures that the devil is around every corner.
And he's in everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
And I think that I don't necessarily fault some of these YouTubers for that because I think that they were raised that's like what was like told to them constantly instead of, and they never had an opportunity to say, okay, what does that actually mean?
Yeah.
You know?
Yep. No, that's great. And I'll just throw in a couple more thoughts and then we'll close out and prep for our theology section. But I think to me, like when I was reading Rosario's response, what really stuck out to me, and I think this was really challenging, especially as like a white person in church and having been blessed to be a part of a lot of racially diverse churches and experiences, is like, I just find it really made me think about how many times I've been in spaces where what is hyper fixated on in terms of what is demonic is it's like movies, music, art, all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, but like we also have a congregant who is like pretty blatantly misogynistic. Like we also have a congregant or group of congregants who are like pretty anti ethnicity of this group of people. And it's like, but we're not going to call that demonic because, you know, and them talking poorly about them and them also being imago Dei. Like, no. We're going to focus on like Reckless was in this song. And so like, we're going to fixate on that or like, oh, like holy water and the voodoo bag are in the same, you know, they're using both to fight. And it's like, but I didn't hear anything in this conversation about how evil the KKK was and how they drove a lot of this narrative and the death and destruction in this whole story. Like, why is that what we're not focusing on? And so I feel like I love how you phrased it, that there's this obsession with what is demonic. And I think in our obsession with the visual and the creative side, we forget about like the literal human things that we are doing literally right next to each other. Yeah. Even in church. Yeah. That are also demonic and also like evil and not conducive for building the body of Christ up. And so that was like a final thought where I was just like, oh, it's all kind of clicked why that was driving me so crazy 100%. With some of those takes. But any closing thoughts on that before we jump out?
Yeah, I think just one more thought as you were talking was history that we don't want to talk about is so many people were pro-slavery and believed that the Bible supported slavery, supported racism. And I think that's why when you start talking about that, people don't want to entertain those discussions because I think we see our own prejudices coming up and it's gross and it feels like it comes almost naturally sometimes. And I think that's what this movie was getting at too, of how widely accepted racism was and still is, which is insane. Yeah. And especially in the church. So I think it's a good discussion point. I think the last thing I would say is the scene where they're just like getting ready with all the garlic and stuff. That scene was awesome.
I love that scene. So tense.
So sick. That was probably my favorite like part of the movie when they're just like gearing up. They don't really have any weapons and you can tell they're going to go insane on these vampires.
So totally. All right, we're going to close out here and we'll catch you in our theology section.